Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range to talk about roller delayed firearms. But wait, there's a brand new roller delayed firearm on the market. It's US made and it's kind of cool. Now the roller delay system like this HK93 was popular during the Cold War. Some countries used it. Spain developed it based off technology that came out of World War II Germany, and of course the Germans licensed and used that technology. But in 2024, when we're filming this, the roller delay rifles aren't all that popular anymore in military circles or even in civilian circles. But that's not because the roller delay system is without merit. It certainly has a lot of merit and a lot of uses and unique qualities. And we're going to talk about in today's video about this new firearm, the ZF-56 from Zenith Firearms. Again, an American-made rifle right here in the United States. And it's really interesting. It's an evolutionary step forward from rifles like the HK93 that you see here. So let's get started with today's video. Take a closer look at the Zenith ZF-56. A lot of folks ask me, how can I get involved in the firearms business in that particular community? And one of the best ways to do that is to become a gunsmith. Every gunsmith I know is just overbooked with work. It's a very good living. And so if you would like to become a gunsmith, you need to go to a gunsmithing school or become an apprentice for an existing gunsmith. But Modern Gun School is an accredited college that also works with veterans in the GI Bill, where you can go and get a degree from accredited college in gunsmithing and then go out and start your own gunsmithing business, which I think is a really great option. Again, throughout my entire life, gunsmiths have always been able to earn a really good living, assuming they have a really strong work ethic. So please check out Modern Gun School. I do have a link in the video description below. Well, folks, this is it. This is the new ZF-56 from Zenith, and this rifle is something I've been kind of looking forward to. I knew they were working on something. I hadn't seen it, and when it finally made an appearance, I was really excited to learn more about it. And so I've been shooting this for a while. Our Patreons, the folks that support us, do have a link down below. We've been doing live streams of our actual testing. And so when we bring a new firearm out like this, we turn on a live stream and you can watch in real time as we're testing the firearms. And so we were streaming all of our testing on this thing. And I was really surprised at how pleasant it is to shoot, how lightweight it is despite its bulky appearance, how well it handles. And it's just so well thought out. I mean, this isn't the product of a military contract, guys. This is a company that manufactured this for the civilian market, which I'm sure they would take government contracts if they appeared. But this thing is seemingly really well evolved for a firearm that's brand new to the US market, that while it relies on some design elements of previous firearms like the HK93, it's a brand new firearm. So we'll go over during the disassembly some of the areas where this is very similar to an HK93 and could probably use parts from it. And then we'll talk about all the differences. And there's more differences than there are similarities in terms of the actual parts that are used inside this rifle. But let's do a little bit of shooting with it. The nice thing about the ZF-56 is, again, it marries modern features with a classic proven design, that being the roller delay. Some of the modern features are ambi controls, and we'll go over this in greater detail. We have a mag release over here, very much like an AR-15. And then, because this is basically an AR-15 type lower, it's different, but very similar. Have ping pong paddle controls over here, ambi mag release over here, ambi fire controls in a better position than something like the HK93. We have a port cover. I mean, it's just really, really cool. We have 4 charging handles still. It does lock open on the last shot fired, but you can also lock the bolt open like a standard HK type firearm, which allows you to do things like the bolt slap. So let's do a little bit of shooting with this, and let's take a closer look at the internals and how this weapon works. So before we delve into the details of the ZF-56, one other rifle I wanted to show you, because this rifle is also currently on the market, is the Spanish Setme L. Now, the Setme is an interesting rifle. It's a series of rifles. So the earlier Setme, which was chambered in 7.62 by 51 NATO or 308, that rifle was a development from World War II Germany, where the engineers left Germany, went to Spain, continued their work. The roller delay system and the roller locking system, 2 different systems, very similar, but quite different. The roller delay system wound up being in the Setme in 7.62 by 51, and later the Spaniards would want to move towards the new NATO standard, the 5.56 by 45, and they would go on to develop the Setme L, which you see here. Now, the roller delay system is different from the roller locking system because it doesn't truly lock. It just creates a delay, allowing the bullet to get out of the barrel, gas pressures to drop to a safe level before the gun opens up. There are roller locking systems like the MG42, where the bolt is locked into place by the rollers, and then during recoil, the entire barrel assembly moves rearward, then allowing the rollers to unlock and move rearward. Okay, so there's a slight difference between the two. And so the delay system became very popular with rifles like this. And so let's do a little shooting with this, and then we're going to move over to the ZF-56 and talk a little bit about it. All right, so let's take a little bit closer look here, and we'll start off at the rear of the ZF-56 and kind of move forward. So back here we have a pick rail adapter, and on this one I have a SIG stock that I had in my gun room. And I just slapped it on here because it's lightweight. It does fold to one side like that, and that's very handy for modern firearms. I do like having that pick rail back here, but here's something that's really, really cool. There's push pins back here. And you can put different stock adapters, if you will. So when I first got this, it had an M4 buffer tube and an M4 stock on it. And that adapter will just pop right in, and the pins will go through and hold that adapter in place. So then you have an M4 stock on it. Or in this case, I currently have the 1913 adapter. And that's pretty darn cool. Kind of a unique feature. All right, so moving forward, it will use standard AR-15 type grips. Inside is a pretty conventional looking AR-15 type hammer, but there are differences to this lower, and we'll talk about that when we get it open and show you the internals. But this is a standard AR-15 type selector, and again, it's ambi on both sides. You'll see the two pinholes here, very conventional in terms of an AR-15 style trigger. Moving forward, we have a very similar to a PDQ, or it might even be a licensed PDQ, bolt stop bolt release right here on the right hand side. So you can push up on it and lock the bolt to the rear, or push down on it if it's locked to the rear and release it. Then we have the AR-15 style mag catch here. Here you can see the capture mechanism for the detent pin and the front push pin and a rear push pin here. So it's standard AR-15 style clamming action to open it up. Already have shown you the port cover. There's a little port buffer here. Moving over to the other side of the rifle, you can see the screws on this side that are holding the metal rails inside of the receiver. So it's an aluminum receiver with metal rails. So the bolt is metal, a carbon steel, and so the rails are, and so they're riding, the carbon steel bolt carrier is riding on steel rails. So you're not going to get galling with extreme heat and things like that, because you have those rails that it's riding on. So you have two very similar types of metal versus aluminum versus steel, carbon steel. Ping pong paddle, ambi mag release. Moving forward, has its own rail system here. You can see where the M-lock, how it's positioned all the way around the handguard. We have the receiver where the rail comes out to about here, and then we have the handguard with the continued pick rail going all the way out. So if you're going to mount optics, try to keep it back here on the receiver for the best rigidity. We'll take the handguard off here, but it has a pinch screw. We'll show you how this all works. It has an interesting barrel system in it. We'll talk about that when we get the gun apart. Have forward charging. So as I've already pointed out, you can operate the bolt just by pulling on the charging handle. It's an enlarged lever. And if you want to lock it open, just pull it to the rear, rotate it up, and then that takes it off the bolt stop back here. So to release it from this point, you have to do the HK slap to chamber around. Standard profile barrel, and then we have a muzzle device on here with a 1/2x28 thread. Yes, you can suppress these. We'll show you another rifle. Actually, I brought out a pistol that's in 300 blackout of this, and we actually have it suppressed. So I'll show you one of these working with a suppressor on it. This one I haven't suppressed. So that's pretty much it. Now, where it really is going to shine is when we get this thing open, I show you the internals. Let's do a little bit more shooting with it. We are doing our shooting out here with Federal American Eagle. This is some 55 grain ball. And Federal does supply this ammunition free of charge to the channel, so we want to thank them for doing that. I've been shooting Federal ammunition since I was a kid and absolutely love this stuff. Really, really good stuff. Great company, great people. So we'll slap a box of ammo in the mag. Now the rifle does come in a hard case, and it has Zenith magazines with it, but it will use P-mags or anything else that you want to use, conventional mags. Loading it, very much like an AR-15 if you're familiar with that system, or if you like HK style firearms, you can do it this way: lock the bolt to the rear, stick the magazine in, and do the HK slap. Or you can pull the bolt rearward, push up on the mag release, let the charging handle go back forward, and now you'll be able to release the bolt like an AR-15, either with the paddle release over here or with the PDQ type lever over here that drops that bolt. So a very pleasant rifle to shoot. When you hit the magazine release, the magazines do fall free from the firearm. So let's take a look inside of the rifle and see how this whole thing works. So first, I want to make sure the weapon is empty, so I've dropped the magazine out. The bolt is to the rear, so I'm going to go ahead and check and make sure the chamber is empty. It's clear. I'm going to let that bolt go forward. You will notice here on the bolt carrier, it has these serrations, so you can push the bolt into battery if it doesn't go all the way in. It's a forward assist, which is very reminiscent of the serrations that would be on the HK93 bolt and carrier, or in this case, the bolt carrier. So this is an actual HK93 bolt carrier and bolt that we have out for comparison purposes. All right, so now the bolt is home because you want to take the pressure off those recoil springs inside there. I'm going to take the tip of a bullet, push out the rear takedown pin, and it will hinge open, kind of like an AR-15. Inside, you're going to find two captured recoil springs and guide rods versus the single rod of the HK93 series of rifles. Then I'm going to take the charging handle, pull it to the rear. That'll cause my bolt and carrier to kind of come rearward. Get out of there. And then I can take it out of the gun. I can go a step further with the front takedown pin. I can take it out as well. And now you can see the lower. And this is where things get really, really interesting. So you can see that that's an AR-15 hammer in there. And you can see the AR-15 trigger group in there. But over here, we have the ejector, which is very similar to the ejector. This is the HK93 lower. See how the ejectors are very similar? What happens is the bolt and carrier come rearward. They push down on the rear of the ejector, pivoting the front piece up in time for it to meet the base of the case and chuck it out the ejection port. When the bolt goes home, the ejector goes back down under spring pressure. And that's the same mechanism that they've incorporated into this AR-15 style lower. Very, very interesting. And you can see how the PDQ type mechanism is right here and how it works. All right. Well, we have this going on. Let me wipe this off because you have to keep wiping these things off. If you think direct gas impingement guns are filthy, try playing with a roller delay system sometime. These things get absolutely caked in carbon. But they work just fine. Carbon doesn't cause it any problems, just like the AR-15. Just going to try to keep my hands from getting pitch black from handling this thing. Now this has these recoil springs, which when they're in the gun, they just set in the carrier like this, and then they rest against the rear of the lower right here. And that's what it acts upon. Now why 2 versus 1 like the HK? Here's the HK with its 1 recoil spring. Well, this is reminiscent of designs like the AR-180. Which has dual recoil springs and guide rods. And some would argue that that helps to stabilize the bolt and carrier during its travel versus a single One, that it might be able to move or flex in the receiver a little bit and bind up, cause additional friction. This could better handle those types of lateral forces, but who knows? I'm not an engineer. That's just speculation that I've read in the past. The HK system works just fine. Having two, it's one extra piece to worry about, but I don't see it as being a detriment to the design, and who knows, it might be an advantage. All right. Taking it apart is just like an HK, so you're just going to rotate the bolt head to its takedown position, which allows it to come off, and then you rotate your locking piece, your firing pin, recoil spring will come out, and it's really that simple. Now, unlike the HK, which you'll see here, has this big heavy spring-loaded claw that's pushing down on the bolt head, and the larger the cartridge that it chambers and fires, like 308 versus 5.56, the more spring pressure this claw is under. So the 308s can be very difficult without having a technique to disassembling them and reassembling them. They'd be very difficult to do. With the HK93, it's a little bit easier because the claw isn't as strong. So I take the bolt head off the same way, rotate it, rotate the locking piece out of the way. There's the locking piece, and there's the firing pin and spring. So as I was talking about in the earlier part of the video, I'll talk about those here in a moment. If you take a look at the bolt head of the HK and the bolt head of the Zenith, very similar. They're probably using the same rollers that you could pick up off someplace like HK PartsNet if you needed additional rollers. But as you can see, very similar. I'm not going to say that they're identical because they're not, but very similar. But the similarities would be in the extractor, maybe the extractor spring for sure, and the rollers. Okay, the bolt head has a slightly different profile to it, but still very, very reminiscent. If you take a look at the locking pieces, HK, ZF-56, pretty much identical. I'm going to go ahead and say that's going to fit in there. Yeah, it does. So I'm going to say that that's probably just a straight up HK part, copied part, because I do believe they're making these here in the United States. But those are very similar. Take a look at the firing pins, and you can see that there's a slight difference there. So I'm not going to be able to use one and the other because the firing pin's slightly longer on the HK, but very similar. Firing pin springs, there you go. It's lighter profile in the spring here, a little heavier on the HK. All right, so there's your similarities and not so similar parts. Of course, the carriers themselves are completely different, as we've already pointed out. The carrier on the ZF-56 is actually smaller and lighter, so you have less reciprocating mass. All right, so out here, it's another interesting feature. You can take the handguard off. I think I got that in backwards. I should also point out there are QD mounts built into the gun. Don't let me forget that. Get out of there. Woo! All right. There's a QD mount on both sides of the handguard out here. They have these little rubber plugs in them, these little stoppers. You can pry them out. They're just plugs to keep things from getting in there, I guess. And then you have a QD mount there. And if you're not using it, just put the plug in. There's one additional QD mount in kind of an odd place, but back here on top of the pistol grip. I don't think I would ever use this because if you had, the head that plugs in and then the strap hanging down, it's just going to get in the way of the pistol grip. So I don't really have much use for that, but you can also put them out here on stocks like you'll see here on the SIG stock. So now they have the screw out, I can slide the handguard off. And there's the handguard, its charging handle in it. And then on the side of the barrel, let me stick my glasses on here really quick. It just says 5.56 by 45. And I believe this is a 1 in 7. If it is not, I will put a little lower third down there, but I believe it has a 1 in 7 twist in the barrel. All right, so putting it back together, very simple. Just reverse the process. Go ahead and take my handguard, put that back on there, slide it back. That down, pin my lower to my upper here really quick, just like an AR-15 if you will. Leave it it hinged open. Take my bolt and carrier here. I'm going to take my firing pin, put the recoil spring on it, drop it inside there, take the locking piece, turn it, is it that way? And then you just kind of push it back till this shoulder lines up with that shoulder and just kind of rotate it. And then pull it forward, make sure it's all the way extended. If you push it back, it's going to kind of lock in that position. Just unlock it, move it forward again, turn it back into the extended position, and it'll go right back together. So you don't need any special tools, no special techniques. Hand strength is more than enough to get this back together. I'm going to pull the bolt handle to the rear and lock it in the upward position because that'll just stop my bolt and carrier right there, which makes it easy to line up these recoil springs and guide rods, which will launch themselves out of there under spring pressure if you compress them and release them suddenly. All right, get in there, you little stinker. Come on, get. All right, I'm going to release that charging handle and I can push this forward. And then it'll just kind of align itself, just kind of get those little recoil spring and guide rods to pop down in there. And they'll kind of align themselves automatically on the back here, and then push that pin across. And then just do a quick function check. And she's back together. So maintenance on these is very simple. If you're familiar with the HKs, it'll probably be just as simple, maybe a little easier, but very easy to maintain. So I believe I told you guys that I did have a 300 blackout pistol version of the ZF-56, and this is it right here. So as you can see, when I was talking about earlier that you have different adapters back here. So here's the two pins holding it in, and here you can see the M4 buffer tube, and on it I have an SB tactical brace. If this were on a rifle, I could put an actual stock on it, or I could form one this and put an actual stock on it. All right, so everything else is going to be the same. Just has a 300 blackout barrel in it, and this is pretty much, I don't know, just one of the cooler looking guns I've seen as of late. I need to do a video on some of the non-standard firearms we've gotten. There's some really cool stuff that we've covered on the Military Arms channel here in the last couple of years. And I think it's deserving of its own video, and the ZF-56 is definitely going to be in that video because, you know, everybody's so used to their AR-15s and AKs, they don't really look out at new products like this. They go, I'll just keep my AR-15 because I can buy, you know, 16 PSA AR-15s for every one ZF-56, so I'm just going to buy 16 AR-15s of the same make, model, and color. I mean, why not? But some of us like diversity in our lives, and I like playing with different firearms and seeing how technology evolves, and so the ZF-56 is definitely in that category. Very interesting firearms. So this is 300 blackout, uses standard snag magazines. Again, it's a barrel change, perhaps a roller change or bolt head change. But that would allow you to shoot the 300 blackouts out of the rifle. Uses standard snag magazines. I have some subsonics here. And these are some 220 grains from Federal. So throw these in here. Woo! Let's go outside for this one. Grab my ears really quick. When you shoot inside, you'll get a little bit of echo. You won't get a very good idea of what the gun sounds like. We're using some different microphones now. We found that the microphones that we're using from DJI tend to give a little bit better sound when capturing suppressed gunshots. So you tell us what you think of this next segment. All right, so here we go, 220 grain Federal subsonics. I'm not going to shoot steel or anything. I'm just going to shoot it out into some dirt so you can hear it work. Now, look at my eyes. Maybe if I used a flow-through can with supers, I wouldn't get as much gas back in my face. Much like an AR-15, we have a huge seam back here. And so when the overpressurized gas is coming back down the barrel and the action's opening up, that gas is flowing through the receiver and escaping right here, and I'm getting it in the face, which is causing me to have a runny nose and some watery eyes. So You might want to try different cans with this thing. Maybe you could play with some of the rollers and increase or decrease the dwell time to kind of mess with the loads that you're shooting to maybe reduce a bit of that gas. But it's nice and quiet. Shooting at a tree down there I'm trying to take down, I can hear every single shot hit. So it's nice and quiet, very pleasant to shoot. Recoil is extremely mild. What's funny is I'd say that the recoil on this is even more mild than the 5.56. It's just extremely, extremely smooth. So we fired a few groups out of the ZF-56 using some 77 grain match and some 55 grain ball, just regular old Federal American Eagle, the stuff we shoot out here all the time. And here are the results of those test targets. So here we have a 5-shot group that measured 2.2 inches center to center from the 2 shots furthest apart. And then switched to the 77 grain. This was my point of aim. This was my point of impact. This hole was already there from a previous target. But there's my 5-shot group, and it measured 2.1 inches. Why it shifted down 8 inches, couldn't tell you. But left to right didn't change, just that. So it tells me it's probably the cartridge for whatever reason. So anyway, the accuracy, 2.2 inches for a Federal American Eagle ball, that's actually pretty good. And if you find some ammunition the gun likes, you could probably get that down to a 1.5 inch group or so. But I would take 2 inches with just regular old ball like that. The rifles themselves, like the ZF-56 rifle that you see here, they're available in pistol and rifle, available in 5.56 and 300 blackout. I need to make a correction. The ZF-56 is the 5.56 version. Of the ZF-300 is the 300 blackout version of the same firearm. The rifle that you see here retails for about $23.75. So the prices are pretty expensive by most measure. Folks I know are going to complain about the price. Just keep in mind, this is a brand new firearm designed right here in the United States. It just came to market. They haven't been able to recoup any of their R&D costs from the couple of years it took them to, design and build this thing and all the prototypes and all that stuff. So anytime we see a new firearm like this on the US market, prices are going to be more than the $500 prices of brand new guns back in the 1980s. The economy has changed for the worse, and that's just where we are these days. So if you want just a standard 5.56 and you're on a budget, this probably isn't for you. Do take a look at those PSA ARs, for example. But if you are looking for something a bit different, you can check these out. I do believe the 300 blackout version of this in the rifle format is $2,500, and then the prices are different based on the pistols that you would get with the barrel length and things like that. And then they also, I believe, have kits available where you can pick them up that have both the 300 blackout and 5.56. What do I think of the gun? Very, very interesting, very pleasant to shoot. I love the modern features. The quality of the fit and finish and stuff like that is certainly good. I should also add that the rifle weighs about 7.5 pounds empty with no optic on it. So that gives you an idea of the weight of the gun. I did confirm it has a 1-in-7 twist hammer forged barrel in it. So there's some additional details that I needed to give you some clarification on in today's video. So if you have any questions about the ZF-56, ask those questions down below. I do try to stick around for the first couple of days after I post a video to answer any questions you guys may have. Also, if you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel, the best way to do that is become part of our Patreon family. There's a link down below. Also on Patreon, we live stream our testing. So you see in real time if we break something or something goes wrong. I mean, it's 100% transparency for our Patreons. They get to see everything that goes into the testing before we produce videos like this one. So please consider becoming part of our Patreon family. Also, right here on YouTube, you have the Join and Thanks button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash either one of those buttons, and you can help support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. Thank you for 16 years of support. Swing by, check out Copper Custom. We'll talk to you guys soon.